Hi, everyone. This is Hal Krosman with Screenwriting U, and today we're going to be doing Screenwriting Over 50 for real. So let me let you know up front, this is a real class. We're going to go through and fill out all these blanks. By the time we're done, you will have a good understanding of this particular model. Just to also let you know, I've got something going on with my voice. I'm just recovering from a cold that went on for about the last 3 or 4 days. So pardon that. I'll do my best to get through this, and I hope it'll still make a big difference for you. On our end, I'm a guy who began designing training programs about 30 years ago, and I worked with about 120 different major corporations. We worked with some of the biggest corporations in the world, designing programs that shifted their people's abilities, that took people who were good at what they did and made them great at what they did. We do a very specific style of training that no one else in this industry does, called expert models, where we go find out what do the experts do that make them so successful, and then we train everyone else to be able to do those things. Now, for this particular class, you're going to find out, well, actually, let me back up. We came to town about 15 years ago, and we've interviewed over 750 producers during that period of time. I've interviewed at least 125 agents and managers. We've interviewed a bunch of studio people, including the heads of 4 different studios. And then we've interviewed, I don't know how many A-list screenwriters, over 100 easily, in order to put our classes together. With what happened here, let me tell you the story. I had a friend who came to town about the same time as I did. So this would have been about 15 years ago or so. And he showed up about 2 months before I got here, and he firmly entrenched himself in Los Angeles because everybody had told him the thing to do if you want to be a screenwriter is to move to Los Angeles. You guys have probably heard that before. He then decided what his job was to write screenplays, and in the midst of it, to network like crazy. And he built quite an interesting network. He wrote some really, I would say, pretty high-quality screenplays, but not the kind that were easily marketable. His entire focus was getting into the studios. And so he only wrote screenplays that could be done for $100 million or more. Now, and when he first told me that plan back in Texas, I said, wow, that sounds amazing. And he took off to do it. So I arrived here 2 months later, and I came for a different reason, but I was also writing screenplays. And I sat down with him, and he told me about how far he'd come on his plan. And the whole thing sounded really, really good, till about 2 years later when he had not yet made a deal, and he was starting to get concerned. By that point, I had already started interviewing producers, and the reason I was interviewing producers was because I was looking at the process I was using, and it wasn't working either. So I started interviewing producers. As I would go out and pitch, I would then say, would it be okay if I came back and, did a 30-minute interview and talk about how you work with writers. And over a period of that 2 years, I probably interviewed about 50 different producers. So I was just getting my start. I was just getting my understanding of how producers work with people. And I met with him at that point, and he was telling me that things weren't working, but he was going to stick with the exact same plan. Now, by then, with the interviews I'd been doing with these producers, I now knew most of his plan wasn't going to work. So I tried to talk with him about different ways of doing things. What if he kept the same goal, the same vision, to ultimately end up at the studios, but he could put a couple of milestones in between, a couple of steps along the way. And he couldn't hear it. In fact, he got mad at me and told me I was unsupportive. And I didn't hear from him for about 5 years. 5 years later, I ran into him, and he says, yeah, it's going really well. He says, I'm on the edge of a deal, and then wouldn't talk to me anymore. Next time I heard from him, it was on his 10-year anniversary. And he contacted me and said he was having a going-away party. And so I arrived, and there were about 100 people there that he had met in his network. And he got up and told us his sad story of how he did everything he could, and Hollywood didn't respond. So at that point, I sat down and I wrote down all the different strategies I had told him during that period of time. And I thought, let me just look at this. If he would have done these things, what would have happened? Now, this was about 4 years ago, and it was the birth of this particular class. So what you're going to see in the next hour and a half or so is we're going to go through and talk about what actually will work for somebody over 50. In fact, here, the vision. Please write these words. You'll see this on the front page. It says the vision. Write the words, success in the next 5 years. Success in the next 5 years. I don't want you to give it 10 years. I want you to give it 5. And really do what it takes to actually make that happen. Now, he did what it took to make what he thought was his dream happen. And after 10 years, he gave up because he had not made any kind of real progress other than building a network and having a stack of screenplays that he couldn't sell. We look at this in a very, very different way. And I want to show you why I believe anybody on this phone line can succeed as a screenwriter. Let me take you through this because I want you to see that this is really truly possible. It is not. Every time you hear people talk about how impossible something like this is, you've got to go look at the people who are making it. So I want you to really see what's happened since then. We put together this class, the one that we're going to do today, and then, of course, we have other classes behind the scenes that we do. But our writers, the ones who have gone through the initial program that we have, it's called the Pro Series. It's a 6-month-long program that covers the 300 essential skills you need to have as a screenwriter. The writers that you see here are the graduates of that program. They are the alumni. They're the Screenwriting U alumni. What I'd like you to see is how many of them are over 50, because I think that's interesting. The very first one there is Dawn Crouch. She's over 50. Underneath that, January 25th, is Kevin Ash. He's over 50. Kevin now has had 4 or 5 different deals since he's been with us. Underneath that is Tina Field Howe, who got her screenplay optioned. And by the way, all of these are deals with producers. Tina is also over 50, and she's had at least 4 deals with us. Hamas, hired to write an action-adventure story. I don't know how many deals Jacob's made. I'm going to guess 4 or 5 since he's been with us. Underneath that, Don Freed and Mike Furman. Now, if you look at the pictures, Don Freed is easily over 50. Mike Furman is a youngster. He's probably in his 30s. They teamed up, but it's still a writer over 50. Underneath that, Gabrielle. April 15th, is another writer over 50 who succeeded. Thomas Bauer, same thing. A lot of times when people talk about the over 50 thing, they say one of 2 things. They either say, look at the ones who made the Academy Award deals, right? Because there absolutely have been writers who are over 50, even over 60, who have made Academy Awards, who have gotten Academy Awards. They'll point to them, or they'll point to the few that have made the big blockbuster deals, where they ended up writing something that made $100 million or $200 million. I'll be honest with you. In my opinion, those are the exceptions. Those are the things that happen once you apply all the right strategies and you keep going and you do what it takes to get there. The other thing people will say is that Hollywood discriminates against people over a certain age limit, and And that used to be true in the in writers' rooms, in the TV rooms, and which there was a reason for that, by the way. It was because most of the people in those TV rooms were in their 20s, and for them, looking across the table and seeing somebody in their 50s looked like they were either talking to mom or dad, and so they had issues with that. But there was a lawsuit, and that changed also. What I can tell you, though, is if you're trying to break in, the easiest way to break in is through feature films, and it's getting a start at things. So let me just kind of take you through what we're going to do. We're going to start with this first page that's going to give you an overview as to who you need to be in order to succeed. Then we'll go directly into the strategies. We've got 6 different strategies that are all strategies that work for someone over 50 years old, especially strategy number 6. And when we get to that last page, by the way, strategy number 5 is going to keep you from making the biggest mistakes most writers make. You'll see it says strategy 5, don't fight blank. When we get there, that one, if you just make sure that you follow that one, you will save yourself from making really costly mistakes that could take years out of your life. And right now, I don't know how old you are, but I'm going to say I don't want to take any extra years out of my life. I want to do what it takes to succeed right now. If that's where you're at, this is going to work really well for you. But strategy number 6, create the ultimate bait. This is something we just recently discovered that is causing producers to sit up and listen, no matter what your age, no matter where you live. It's the ultimate bait. It's the new thing that is shifting everything, and it is 100% within your control. So, in the midst of doing that, somewhere along the way, we'll take about 10 minutes and talk about this, the Pro Series, our professional level class, that if what you're trying to do is to make it as quickly as possible, I would highly recommend jumping into that class. It's also the class that once you go through it, then you become part of our Screenwriting U alumni. So then that gives you an instant network, and it gives you one of the most supportive groups you have ever worked with. So let's start on page 1. Just a moment. Okay, back on page 1. At the very top there, so we had the vision, and you put in the words already, success in the next 5 years. So this is what you're looking to accomplish. You're looking to accomplish success in a reasonable period of time. In order to do that, you need a realistic path that is designed to get you where you want to go. And it's every step of it should make sense. Every step of it should work for you. You shouldn't be putting yourself so far out that you're having to constantly go for the, quote, impossible dream. So you've got to make this possible first. So to do that, let's first start with what gives you power. The first thing there, it says knowing what is, put these words, knowing what is attractive to producers. Knowing what is attractive to producers. So this is one of the things that my friend was missing, even though he never could understand this. He was only writing $100 million plus movies, which meant he was going to a very small market. And actually, that's the third one. So let's fill in these others. Number 2, the second one is focusing on your strengths. The third one is going to accessible markets. So you want to start out with some kind of project that's highly attractive. That means high concept. That means an underlying property. That means you are writing something that the moment you pitch it, people light up. You want to then focus on your strengths. What are you really great at? right? What are you already great at? Are you great at character? Are you great at structure? Are you great at plot? Are you great at writing dialogue? Whatever you're great at, first, I would emphasize that in whatever script you wrote. Second, I would do everything I could to get even better at it. And this is, I understand, absolutely, you're going to also fill in the weaknesses. Absolutely, you need to make sure that you have a well-rounded writing experience. At the same time, whatever you're really good at, if you could double or triple the quality of that, you would stand out from the crowds. Somebody who is so good at dialogue that if you just even read the first page, you go, oh my God, right? If somebody's that good, you know what? Anyone who even looks at their screenplay will go, wow. If you are that good at putting together plots and structures, then you know what? First you do it in the screenplay, and then you highlight that in your pitch. Whatever it is that you're really good at, your job is to become great at it and then highlight that when you interact with producers. The third thing here, going to accessible markets. So this was the problem. This was one of the big problems that my friend had. He was actually going to inaccessible markets. He wanted to go to the studio and the studio only. He wanted to hit the big time, and he talked about this endlessly. He was going to go back to his small Texas town and show them all, But the truth is, the way he did it was he chose the most difficult market there is to break into, and he stood outside that door and knocked on it for 10 years, and nobody ever opened it. So that's not the strategy you want to use, and you want to be really careful about that. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't keep that goal high. You still may want to go for those big movies at some point in your career, right? That may be your ultimate goal, but you need to create some steps in between. Going back to all the interviews we've done, I've talked with lots and lots of A-list screenwriters about how they broke in, and you would be shocked to hear, even the ones that the media came out and said, first-time writer makes $1 million deal with studio. What I found out when I asked the writer, I'd say, wow, so first-time writer, $1 million deal. Had you written any scripts before that? And they would say, oh, yeah, 15. And I'm like, but they described you as first-time writer. And they would say, well, to the studio, I was a first-time writer. To the studio, I was brand new, right? Or I would ask them, had you done any smaller deals before that? And they would say, yes. I was talking with one guy who, he had made the news about how his very first deal was with the studio. And it's like, when I interviewed him in front of about 100 people, he said, well, yeah, I'd done a couple of little indie projects before that. And I said, okay. So let me just ask. That's the path you took. Going back, if you were going to talk to you right before you were going to sign that first indie deal where you made almost no money for writing that script, would you tell that person to sign that deal? And he said, oh, absolutely. He says, that's how I learned how to work with producers. That's how I learned how to work the system. So, yes, he said, and I would tell myself to sign every one of those deals on the way to where I am now. And where he was at that point, that was Alan Loeb. He's written the movie Wall Street, Money Never Sleeps. He did the remake of Fame. He did the movie 21. He's had like 7 big movies come out. But he credits that to what he learned on the way up. Now, by the way, I asked him, I said, wow, so that it took you a while to get to where you are. Is there anything that could have helped you do it faster? And he said, yeah, if somebody would have explained to me how to get here, if somebody would have told me how to do what I needed to do. And then he went on and spent the time talking about there were so many skills that he thought he didn't need, that he had to learn. And he really wished he could have come and worked with us and work with this group of people to be able to get where he needed to go, because he felt like it was a very lonely thing on the way. So that then takes us to the next thing, which is becoming a great writer. Becoming a great writer. So obviously there's, and in fact, let's just go down here and you'll see this. Who do you need to be to succeed? First, number one, become a power writer and a power learner. So this is what it takes to become a great writer. Yes, you write every day, but it's not just that. You need to be constantly learning. The people who think that they already learned it all, it's like it's always amazing to me. It's usually the intermediate writers. It's the ones who have written 3 to 7 screenplays. Usually think pretty much they know it all, and it's like, well, you know what, they do. They know 95% of what they need to know, and some of it they know really well. Some of it they know somewhat well. And then there's that 5% that's missing that will keep them from succeeding for the rest of their lives. And they've got to find it. When I have pros come into my class, and I'm talking, we've had writers who have taken the class I'm going to talk to you about, the Pro Series. We've had writers who have taken that who were professionals. We had one guy who had sold 7 scripts. He'd had 6 of them made into movies. That was in the 90s. He then he had some years where he had to go through some health crisis. He took 5 years off. He came back, and he couldn't figure out why his scripts from that point on wouldn't sell. And so he came and jumped in the Pro Series and took our 6-month-long class to find out. What was interesting about him was he knew 99% of the skills in that class. But the other thing that was interesting was every day he learned something new. Every single day. He was intense on learning. He was focused on learning like crazy. And by the way, he was 60 years old at that point. And he said, he realized up front, I asked him why he was so committed to learning. He said he realized up front there's something that's keeping him from succeeding, and he's got to discover what it is. Now, halfway through the class, by the way, he did. He figured it out. He went back, he rewrote one of his scripts based on a breakthrough that he'd had in our Pro Series, and within the 3 weeks before the end of the class, he sold that script again. And so now he was back in business. And from that point on, he's been doing great. But he had to discover what it was he didn't know, and he had to elevate the skills that he already knew. So that's what I'm encouraging you to do here. You'll see underneath number 1 there, it says, write every day, create every day, learn every day. This middle one is probably the most important of the 3. I know lots of people who write every day. I know a small percentage, probably 25%, who write every day and learn every day. I know very, very few who write every day, create every day, and learn every day. And that's the key to your success. So you need to be writing every day. You need to be learning every day. But the creating part, this is the thing that most people are missing. I talked with a writer 2 days ago, and he was telling me he hadn't been progressing for the last 6 months. And he's trying to figure out why, and he's asking me if this class will help and everything else. And I said, okay, so tell me what you've been doing. And he says, I write every single day. I said, okay, and what percentage of the days do you learn something new? And he goes, well, I've been writing for a long time, Hal. So that answers that question. And I said, okay, what percentage of the days are you creating something new? And he says, well, for the last 6 months I've been editing 2 of my scripts. Now, when somebody's editing a script, they're not creating something new. They may be working with words and moving words around, but editing isn't creating. So you need to know that. It's really important. If you're in the middle of editing a script, you still need every day to choose to create something, even if it's to create a scene for maybe some future script, or to create a new character for a possible script, or to create a new idea for a script. You need to be creating on a bigger picture level, and you need to do that every day. The problem that I think a lot of people have when they get to a producer is that they're in editing mode, and the producer is trying to solve the problems that'll make the movie, and the producer wants to create something new. And so it's like, okay, we need to take this scene out, we need to create a new one. Or we need to, I got that you made this a male character, but I've got this actress who's ready to go right now. If you could just rewrite this part as a female, and instead of a 30-year-old male, make it an 18-year-old female, we're in business. And now you need to create. And that's where most people get hung up, is because they're not used to creating every day. So this is an important muscle you need to be exercising every day, especially for you and I. For anybody who's over 50, we're already on the edge of heading downhill from a physiological perspective. We need to keep creating. I create something every single day, no matter what. Every day, somewhere early in the day, I start looking for what am I going to create today, and it might be part of a class, it might be a scene, it might be something that we're trying to create. Like we just came up with the National Screenwriters Day that we did here on January 5th. I created that. And I created that on one of those days where I wasn't thinking, let's see, I'm not writing a scene today, I'm not in the middle of a script. What else could we create? So that's part of your job. Part of your job is to keep exercising that muscle over and over. And it should become one of the strongest muscles you have, is your ability to create. Not just to write the words down, and especially not just to edit the words. If you do that, then you will become a great writer. Underneath that, it says, number 2, focus on what truly makes you, put these words, special, unique, and marketable. Special, unique, and marketable. Now, let me tell you the difference between these. And actually, I'll just tell it to you with one of our writers. We had a writer who came to me. He's writing rom-coms, and I'm looking at the rom-com ideas that he has, and I said, wow, those aren't real strong. Tell me about your background. And it turned out this guy had been in the intelligence communities with the NSA and the Department of Defense and a bunch of others for 25 years. And so it's like, okay, that you could say he's been with the NSA. That could make him somewhat special, right? If I take him into a meeting and I say, hey, I've got a guy who was, in the NSA, he's got an interesting story, I could possibly get a meeting just from that. But now the question is, what makes him unique? So I asked him that, and he says, there are certain things I can tell you and certain things I can't. I can't tell you any of the classified things that might make me unique, but he ran off the main projects that he had done. And one of them was he worked with the Department of Defense to try to weaponize the space shuttle. And so he headed up the program with NASA and the Department of Defense. That, in my opinion, makes him unique. That has him stand out from all the other NSA guys out there. That gives him certain experience that we didn't know about. Now, my guess is if I brought 10 NSA guys who were really active in the community into a room, and I asked each one of them what makes them unique, they would probably have different projects they had worked on. But now let's go to marketable. So I said, tell me about that project. And he says, okay. And he starts telling me certain things. And there were lots and lots of details. Most of them didn't make it marketable. We got to one thing, and I went, oh, my God, that's amazing. Can you actually write about that? And he says, yeah. He says, I've been cleared on this. And it was one part, and it's the thing he's writing his screenplay about right this moment. I can't tell you what it is, but it's what made it highly marketable. It's a high concept. The moment that producers hear about it, they're going to be interested. So he is special in some way, he's unique in some way, and he's marketable in some way. Now, I'm going to tell you, very likely, you have something like that in your life. You might not have exactly that. Maybe you didn't work with NASA. Maybe you weren't you weren't a spy or any of that kind of thing. But somewhere in your life you have something that makes you special, that has you stand out. Then in the midst of the group of those people that all did whatever that one thing was, now what is it that makes you unique? And then what specific journey or story could you tell that is highly marketable? That's something to consider, because if you can find that, then you're walking in the door at minimum with an introduction that has people go, oh my God, wow, I'm so glad to meet you, right? And then out of that, you could tell story after story after story. Number 3. Be smart about your strategies, not set in your ways. Be smart about your strategies, not set in your ways. The problem that my friend had that we were talking about was that he had one vision, and then once he figured out the thing that motivated him, he didn't stop and think about different strategies. So I'm asking you to be smart about your strategies. Strategies can change, by the way. He was so set in his ways, whatever the plan was he came up with before he came to Los Angeles, he never changed that plan. Never. Now, I told him over and over, I think you should continue going for the studio thing, but shift the plan. Come up with different strategies. This one isn't working. Move forward. Take a step that will move your career in a better place. And that was something that he couldn't consider. His whole plan had to be right, and it had to stay exactly the way it was. It was like he made the entire plan immovable, and that's what caused his failure, in my opinion. It wasn't his writing, it wasn't his creativity, it wasn't his network, it wasn't Hollywood, it wasn't the studios. It was that one thing. He was so set in his ways that he couldn't rethink his strategies and his plan. So let's go to our strategies. We're going to talk about these. These are some of the strategies that I recommended to him. They're strategies that are working for our writers right now. You just saw a whole bunch of the deals that have happened. We've had over 100 writers make deals. Part of it comes from the fact that they have a very solid education. They know exactly what they're doing. But the other part of it comes from the strategies that they're choosing. So strategy number 1, write this in there. Think movies, not lottery tickets. Think movies, not lottery tickets. So this was my buddy's problem. He wanted the lottery ticket. He wanted that huge win, and he talked endlessly about what it was going to be like when it showed up in the media and everything else, and how the people at home were going to think about him and all that. So he was going for the big lottery ticket. He was hoping he was going to be the big millionaire winner in the Hollywood lottery. Let me tell you where I really think this should be. The objective is to take a path that will make deals and get a movie made. So here's the path that I saw with the A-list screenwriters. Uh, they did small deals on the way to doing big deals. They got small movies made on the way to making big movies. It's part of the process, right? It's part of the learning process. It's part of the building your credibility process. They took steps that each step moved them to the next level so that they could then take bigger steps. And ultimately, they got where they wanted to go. That's what I'm recommending. In the first line there, it says, blank are the most difficult market there is. Please put the words, studios are the most difficult market there is. So studios are designed to keep people out. That's a big part of their job. So I wouldn't be going there. That's not your objective in the beginning. You ultimately can get there if you do the right things. Underneath that, it says, go to blank, get movies made. Please put these words, go to small producers, get movies made. Why? Because small producers are accessible. There's somebody you can get to. And if you haven't yet had a movie made, then that's your first goal, is to get your first deal that then hopefully gets you a movie made. If that first deal doesn't get you a movie made, if somebody options your script but they don't do it, by the time they get through that process, you'll have written another script. Now you get that one option, you write another one, you get that one option. Sooner or later, one of them turns into a movie. And once it does, then you have more credibility to do the next level stuff. Underneath that, sometimes I have people say, but I don't want to do the lower budget stuff. I want to do something more creative. And it's like, no, actually it's the opposite. It takes more creativity. This is a line directly from a low budget producer. He said it takes more creativity to write a great low-budget movie because you don't have the special effects. So you've got to write in more emotion. You've got to design the story in a way that we're more engaged in the character's journey and all of that kind of thing. It takes more creativity to write a great low-budget movie, but it is 20 times easier to get made than a high-budget movie. 20 times easier. Now, here's what he based that on. That year, the year he said this, which was last year, there were 300 studio movies made. There were 6,000 low-budget movies made during that same time period. That's 20 to 1. It's 20 times easier to get a low-budget movie made than a high-budget movie. So use those numbers in your favor. Strategy number 2, and this I'm putting in here so that you are aware of it. I'm not telling you not to write whatever you're writing right now, but you do need to be aware of what producers are thinking when you go in the door. So strategy number 2 is to write for the money audience. Write for the money audience. Underneath that, it says producers need movies that will draw an audience. This is the job. The job is to create movies that will draw an audience. And this is where a lot of times, again, people are writing things that aren't marketable or that can't possibly draw an audience. It's like you need to be thinking from the beginning. How are they going to sell this movie? How are they going to create? Whatever I'm creating here, how are they going to sell it? You have no idea how many times I'll listen to somebody pitch something, and as soon as they say it, I cannot figure out a way that anybody in this industry could sell that movie. Especially when they're pitching something where it takes them 5 minutes to explain the story, when, you know what, really, the trailers that you see in the movie theaters are 2 minutes long. The TV spots you see are 30 seconds long. We've got to be able to pitch it in a succinct way. So to start out, your job is to draw an audience. Now, let me point to some of these audiences so you can see this. Um, 45% of the moviegoer audience, this is according to last year's statistics, are in the 18 to 39-year-old range. So write that in, 18 to 39. Underneath that, it says 23% are under 18 years old. 20% are 50 years and above, and 12% is 40 to 49 years old. Now, when you're thinking about this, oh, and by the way, if you're going to go over 60 years old, it's about 8% plus or minus. So when you're thinking about your story and you're writing something, look to see who are the characters, what are the characters' ages? You know, are you writing for a market that's a big market, or are you writing for a market that's a very small market? The good news is recently there have been more movies for people over 50, and there have been more movies that are starring people over 50, even some that have lead characters that are over 60. But in general, if you're trying to get something to an audience, you want to go for the biggest audience you can. So my advice would be you want to make sure you have at least one or two of the lead characters be somewhere in that 18 to 39-year-old range. So if it's going to be if one of your characters is 60 years old, chances are the other character is right in the range of the 18 to 39 range. Somewhere in there. If you looked at the movie The Intern, you notice Robert De Niro, but he's in his 70s, and he plays a guy who's 70 years old who goes back to work as an intern at this company. Most of the people around him were in the 18 to 39-year-old range. In fact, most of them were probably in their 20s, other than Anne Hathaway. So they built that movie for people in our age range to go see it, and for people in the younger age range to see it also. Just something to consider. Okay, let's go to strategy 3. And this one is the key to your success when it comes to working with producers. And by the way, if you're ever going to get a movie made, you are going to work with producers. So get ready for that now and start preparing for that. That's what I try to do with my writers. I try to get them prepared way in advance. So by the time they actually get to the point where they're working with producers, you know what? Here's what I want, and this is what's happening. They're the most competent person in the room. And that's my goal with every person that works with us. So this is the key, one of the big keys to that, and that is become very flexible. This is strategy 3. Become very flexible with your writing. Put in the word flexible. Now, this goes contrary to what most writing teachers will tell you and what a lot of writers will tell you. There are a lot of people out there that say, once you've written that script, don't let a producer change it. So let me help you out on this. There's two things to know. First thing is, I've talked with lots of those people, and I'll ask them a question. I'll say, so let me just make sure I understand. So you're going to go in, sit down with the producer. Your whole objective is to not let them change a single word of your script. Is that right? And they'll say, that's right. I'm the writer. I know what I'm doing. And I'll go, okay, so the producer now wants to give you some ideas for improvement. They want to give you feedback on the script. They want to give you what are called notes on ways to make it easier to get this movie made into a movie. So what's the problem with that? And they'll go, same thing. They shouldn't change any words on my script. It's not okay. It's, blah, blah, blah. And I go, okay, I just want to ask two things. First, is your objective mainly to keep the words the same, or is it to get the movie made? Because that's really important. Once you get there, your job is to get the movie made. You know, I've had people who, I had a friend who refused to change anything, and after a while, the production company said, sorry, then we can't go through with this. He lost the deal. He also lost his agent in the midst of that deal. I asked him afterwards, I said, you know, now that you know that was going to happen, would you be willing to change the words? Was it really worth the fight to keep the words on page 32 the same? And he goes, I would change them in a heartbeat. He says, and this was he actually had a deal with the studio, and refused to change the words. It's crazy. It's completely crazy. The thing to know on this is that when a producer is asking you to change anything, their reason is almost always because it increases the chance of getting the movie made. They have all kinds of pressures on them: money pressures, actor pressures, director pressures, casting pressures, location pressures, all those kinds of things. And a lot of times, if they can't make one of those things work, then you've got to make a change to the script because you couldn't get that location, or because the budget got lowered, or because we didn't get the actor we thought, right? And it's like, you need to be able to deal with this. So as a writer, the first thing you need is you need to be able to be flexible. The more flexible you are, the more likely your movie gets made. Now, let me tell you the second thing. When I was talking to those writers who refused to change things, I would say, let me just ask you, did you ever get feedback from a writer on your script? And they go, oh, yeah, this script's been through multiple passes and multiple, feedback rounds. And I go, okay, how many writers did you get feedback from? And they'll tell me 4 or 5, 6, 7, whatever they had. And I go, okay, did you ever make changes based on what the writers said? And their answer is yes, of course. If I thought it was really good, I did it. And I'm like, okay, so you're willing to take feedback from writers but not from producers? That's nuts. So that's what this one's about. And I'm sorry I didn't mean to go into the long, drawn-out thing. Let me just take you through this so it's clear. Value number one of being flexible. The more ways you can write a scene, the more creative you're writing. When somebody says there's only one way to write that scene, they're trapped in a box. I gave 30 writers a scene, and I did this as an experiment. I gave them the scene. I said, here are the characters. Here's the scene arc. Here's what happens in the scene. It starts at this point. It ends at that point. Here's the characters along with their exact traits and the subtext that each character has. So I'm giving a pretty strong, here's the frame for this. Now go write the scene. Come back tomorrow. Let's all take a look at what we have. We had 30 different writers write 30 completely different scenes. Now, the reason I did that was because I wanted to see how many different ways could you write that same scene. You need to know, anything you've written, anything, could be written 10, 20, 30, maybe 50 different ways. So when somebody says this is the only way to write it, they're trapped in a box. That's not going to get them where they want to go. It's not going to have them succeed. They're not very flexible. Value number two, you will be significantly more competent when working with writers, with producers. You'll be significantly more competent when working with producers. So the more flexible you are, the more competent you are in that situation. This isn't, and then value number three, you'll have producers who want to work with you again and again and again. Put in the words, want to work. This is why we do this. So the better you become at your skills, the more flexible you become. Now, underneath that it says, What does it take to do this? Please put in these words: more skills, more practice, and more willingness. More skills, more practice, and more willingness. If you have more skills, you can take the same scene and write it more ways. And that's, a lot of people don't think this way. Somebody said to me, my producer came back and he gave me the least amount of notes he could. He wants me to change this. All he said was, it needs more depth, and it needs to be more engaging. It's like, what am I supposed to do? And I said, okay, depth to me implies either subtext or character. You need to look at who your character is in the profile. Go look at who they are. Is there a way to give them more depth so they're actually coming across as more interesting? Subtext means you go look at the subtext skills. Are there more of those skills you could build into your screenplay? Interest or engaging, when he said it needs to be more engaging, the first place I'd be looking is at interest techniques. We've got about 20 different interest techniques, different ways to create interest in a scene. How many different ways could you write this scene if you focused each version around a different interest technique? So the first thing I do, and when I talk to A-list screenwriters, they do this too, is when somebody asks for changes, the first thing I do is I say, which skills might I use to make those changes? Because as soon as you do that, you're in a different world. What most people do is somebody asks for changes and they go, okay, I've got to change the words. And they like the words the way they're laid out, and so they move the words around. And then the producer comes back and says, no, this didn't do it. We need something deeper. You've got to go to the skills. So that's where you're going to find your success on this. Now, underneath that it says blank daily, and you'll easily create blank in front of producers. Please put these words: practice daily, and you'll easily create magic in front of producers. Now, we're going to go to strategy 4, 5, and 6 in just a moment, including the ones you most need to know, which is strategy 5, what not to fight, and then strategy 6, creating the ultimate bait. But first, if you can, please pull out the very last page, and I want to talk with you about the upcoming class that all those deals that you saw on the Screenwriting News site, they all came from the alumni of this class. We have, Screenwriting U has an alumni, and the class I'm going to talk to you about here is the prerequisite to get into that alumni. The alumni, by the way, is free. It's free for anyone who's graduated this program, and it's an incredible organization. We actually spent years designing it and planning it out so that the moment that you become part of this alumni, you have an instant network of writers who are actually making deals. You'll notice, again, if you look at the amount of deals that we've had over 400 deals that have shown up for our writers in the last 4 years, 300 of which are on the site. So it's an instant network of writers who are making deals, who are working with producers, many of who have agents and managers. It's a great place to exchange feedback. Those writers exchange feedback at a much higher level than most groups that I ever see. And it's a place where everybody is focused around one thing. What does it take to get you your next deal in this industry? Now, we chose to focus around that because if writers are actually making deals, if they are getting their scripts optioned, if they are getting movies made, they're having real success. They're having the kind of success that the industry notices. If people are just writing script after script after script and never, ever getting optioned, they're not having success. The industry doesn't notice it. The industry doesn't even care. So that was where we decided to put our focus. That's what the entire purpose of our alumni is. Now, let me talk with you about the class. that can get you there if that's what you want to do. The Pro Series is a 6-month-long class. It actually begins about 1 month from now on March 11th. And during that 6 months, you are going to learn 300 skills. So these are the 300 skills that producers told us writers need. Now, you may be thinking, who are they to tell us and that kind of thing. But the reality is you know what? If you're going to get a movie made, you're going to have to work with a producer. So you may as well go in the door being highly competent. And that to me is what this whole thing is about. It's about getting you to the point where, you know what, you can work with any producer to get your movie made. And so you're no longer worried about whether or not the producer is going to do bad things to your script. You're there, and you are an active and ongoing part of the team. So here's what we did. We took a look and we said, what are the problems most writers have? And then what are the things producers are telling us they need? So you'll see, if you look on the right-hand side, you'll see a list of 10 modules. The first module is one of the biggest problems that writers have. It's creating a marketable concept. So, and this most people don't even know until you get to the market. Most people sit down, they write their script, the idea comes to them, they just go with it. They don't ever stop to evaluate whether it's marketable. When they get to the market, the first time they go to pitch it to a producer, they find out that their entire project is not something that they can sell, that the market isn't interested in those kinds of projects. And it's like, what they don't know was the first decision they made was the one that caused them not to be able to sell. So the first thing we want to do is empower you in this area. The job is to learn how to create concepts. And during this particular module, you'll learn 12 different ways to brainstorm what we call high concepts. You will brainstorm throughout it. You'll be every day. You'll be doing brainstorming 5 or 10 different ideas. By the time you're done with this module, you'll have between 40 to 60 different movie ideas. Now, then, at that point, what we do is we tell you how to pare it down to the top 10, and then you get to go out and test those ideas on your friends. Now, this may sound kind of strange to you, but what you're going to be doing is you're going to be seeing how do audiences respond. So you'll take 2 or 3 ideas, you'll call up a friend, and you'll say, hey, I'm thinking about writing something right now. I was wondering if I could get your response on my ideas. And then you'll present the ideas to them. And you're looking for the emotional response. Do they fall in love with it instantly? Do they say, oh, my God, I've got to go see that? Right? So you've got your best ideas. You're going to be running them past your friends. You're going to get a chance to see how they respond to concepts. In the midst of that, you're going to learn a lot about what will draw an audience. By the time you're done with that, you evaluate them based on that. You will then pick your top 2. You'll bring them into a coaching call with either myself or my producing partner, my wife, and you will talk to one of the 2 of us about exactly what makes that concept marketable, why you want to do it. We'll give you our feedback on what we think will happen when you get to the market, and then you get to make whatever choice you want. So you're going to choose what you write during this program. Now, you may already know what you're going to write. Even if you know what you're going to write, I still want you to go through this process so that you learn how to create high concepts for the future. Because there's another script after the one you just wrote, and maybe there's another one after that. So each script, if you can come in with high concepts, you have a better chance of selling. If we skip down 2 modules there to number 3, creating characters for A-list actors, this is something you want to make one of your strengths. And here, let me be honest with you. Anybody can create a character. Anybody. Everybody I talk to, every writer I talk to has created hundreds of characters. That's not the question here. Our question isn't, can you create a character? Our question is, how do you create a character that would actually lure a major actor? So what I did to learn this one was I went and interviewed 32 different actors' production companies. And I sat down with the producers, and started from the very beginning, and I said, what causes your actor to sign on to a project other than money? Right? What is it about the script? How do they read a script? Which parts of the script do they read first? Right? What are the things that if they're in a script, they cause your actor to say absolutely no? I ask all the questions that you could imagine having to do with this. When in the midst of interacting with 32 different actors, production companies, we were talking to some pretty important people, and they gave us their answers. Now, by the way, just so you know, we talked with George Clooney's company, we talked with Sandra Bullock's company, Matthew McConaughey's company, John Cusack's company, Morgan Freeman's company, Pierce Brosnan's company. We were looking for what causes the A-list actor to sign on. So that's how we built our model. So when you come into this part of the program, you're going to learn first the basic stuff having to do with creating character profiles and building a character that's interesting and engaging and can go on this journey. Then you're going to learn how do you now make it appealing to a major actor. And when you get to that part, you're going to be surprised. You're very likely some of the characters that you've already created, if you just make a couple of quick changes to them, they may be something that would be appealing to an actor. You just have to understand what causes actors to say yes. So the next two modules are all about interest techniques. They're all about how do you make your script completely fascinating? How do you make every single page so interesting that a producer forgets their own life when they're reading the script? Right? This is critically important in today's market, and it's critically important to you. If you can make every page so interesting that people can't put your script down, you've got a really good chance of succeeding in this industry. Then we get down to the next four. Each one of these goes into a very specific part of the script that is incredibly important. The first one is on subtext. We have mastered the model of subtext. And if subtext is even slightly confusing to you, like if somebody said, here, you need to build more subtext into this scene, if you don't instantly know how, by the time you're done with this module, you will. And this is something most of the time people come in and I ask them about subtext in the beginning, and they'll talk like it's this mysterious thing that just kind of emerges. And it's like, no. When you get into this particular program, this part of the program, you'll find out that it's actually something that you have control of. You can design and build subtext into every page of your script. And by the way, I'm not talking about having the dialogue tell us what the subtext is. I'm talking about having a story beneath the story. I'm talking about the audience constantly perceiving what's going on under the surface because of how you wrote on the surface. So it really is kind of magical. The next module, Module 7, is Advanced Dialogue. We give you 47 different ways to say any line of dialogue. That really is helpful if you're trying to write some great dialogue. The next ones, then it's the first 10 pages. How do you make them the most interesting they possibly can be? And the last 10 pages, how do you make sure this script ends in a powerful way that creates buzz with an audience? Now, once you've gone through all of that, then you get down to Module 10. Module 10 may be the most important module of this program. It's how do you create a complete marketing campaign for your script. One of the reasons our writers are making more deals than any other screenwriting classes organization anywhere, one of the reasons why is because they're getting in more doors. So this is kind of important. If you can't get in the door, you won't get your script read. You've got to know how to get in that door. So what we do here is we actually sat down and I interviewed about 100, plus or minus, about 100 producers about pitching. And then I interviewed another 100 producers about query letters. Now, the reason why, by the way, is because some producers read query letters. So I would ask them, do you read query letters? And if they said yes, then I would go down my query letter path. If they said no, then I would go down the pitching path. And in each case, I had about 15 questions about pitching or about query letters that were designed to help us understand exactly what causes them to say yes, exactly how they see those pitches, and how they respond. So, in this module, you're going to learn 4 different pitches, and you're going to design and create them during the module. You're going to have your one-sentence pitch, which is usually called an elevator pitch. You're going to have your phone pitch. You're going to have your query letter pitch, and then you will have your Pitch Fest pitch. So once you have those 4, you can go out and get your script into production companies. And by the way, we'll take you through each one of those, and then at the end of that, we will do a one-on-one coaching call with you to go over your marketing materials to make sure that they work. So overall, what this program does is this. You're going to learn 300 professional level skills. The ones you already know, you're going to improve. The ones you don't know, then you're going to, for the first time, discover them, learn them, and be able to add them to your toolbox. As you're doing this, you're going to write a screenplay that will very likely end up being one of the best screenplays you've written in your life so far, maybe the best. And by the time you're done, you will create a marketing campaign to go out in the market. Once you've completed this program, you are then invited into our alumni, which again, I told you our alumni is free to people who have graduated from the class. As long as you follow the rules in the alumni, which we have some very specific rules that keep it on track, as long as you follow those rules, you're in that alumni for life. And again, what that gives you is a professional level network of writers who know what they're doing, who are already in the market, who are making things happen. I don't know of any network that even gets close to it at the present moment. So if you like what you're hearing here, come join us. Right now, the regular price is $1,100. Right now, you can get in for $800, so it saves you $300 because we're a month in advance. That gives you, during this next month, you can brainstorm some ideas, bring in whatever ideas you'd like to get started. One other thing I'll tell you on this, if you'd like a payment plan, we can get you in for $250 up front. There's a $50 fee built into that, and then it's $100 a month after that till it's paid off. So, and all you have to do in order to sign up, just simply go to one of our follow-up emails. You'll find a link in there. Click whichever appropriate link, whether it's the payment plan or the full pay, and sign up. Join us, and come be part of this program. All right, let's do the others. Strategy number 4. Give yourself an easy entrance. This was one of the problems that my buddy had. It was he was making it almost impossible for him to get in the door. I want you to make it easy. So, first, become a great writer. Now, he was a good writer. He was. He never got to being a great writer. He was too closed-minded. He kind of, at some point, he locked it in and he said, I'm already there. And now it's about them. Why aren't they looking at my scripts and that kind of thing? He never understood what really truly makes a great writer. And basically what it comes down to is, again, it's that writing every day, learning every day, creating every day. If you just keep learning and creating every single day, sooner or later you will be a great writer. Our program obviously makes it easier for you to do that, and you can do it faster because you have all the how-tos there. B, put the word high-concept writers are highly valued in this industry. This one is more important than you know. About 100,000 screenplays come into town every single year. Out of the 100,000, less than 5% of them get read by anyone in the industry, and less than 2% of them are high concept. Surprisingly enough, the number of how many get picked up, it's about 2%. So those are the ones that get optioned and have a chance in this industry. So writing high concepts is a strategy you absolutely have to learn. And it's in my opinion, it's probably one of the most important things that you can do to increase your chance of making deals. Underneath that, C, use the ultimate bait. That's strategy 6. We'll talk about that in a few minutes. Here's a couple of other ideas. D, option a book that is in demand. Option a book that is in demand. That's another way to get in. We have had, we've probably had about 30 of our writers in the last 2 years who have optioned a book that then got them in the door. And because they got in the door, now they have a relationship with the producer. They're able to go back to them with other projects. So just because you choose to option a book or you choose to write a high concept project for your next one doesn't eliminate the chance of your other projects succeeding. E, this is another strategy. You can partner with a pro. And that pro could be a producer, could be a director, or it could be an actor that you write for. And I've got a couple of writers. One lady who partnered with a director, and this was an up-and-coming director. He'd only done one movie. She partnered with a director. She wrote his next movie. He then got that movie produced. He came back to her at that point and said, hey, would you like to work on something different? He had another idea, and she wrote that. And so she ended up getting 2 movies made with him, but in the meantime, that then got her to another producer, a much bigger producer, who she has been hired to write 2 scripts for so far, and both of those scripts are out for funding right now. So if either one of those happen, she then suddenly becomes one of those writers you know about. So these are strategies that can really help. Now, I'm not saying it's the only thing. There are still other ways to get in the door. But let's go to strategy 5. Strategy 5. Now, this is where I'm about to tell you all the things not to do. Please know, if you've done any of these things, so have all of us. Every single thing I'm about to tell you not to do, I violated early on in my writing career. So don't feel bad at all. And by the way, even if you've done this, like let's say you've written 4 or 5 scripts and almost all of them fit into one of these categories, it's still possible that those movies could get made later. It's just when you're making your next selection, please pay close attention to this. So, strategy 5, don't fight uphill battles. Uphill battles are where we make a choice that we're coming in and people already are resistant to those things inside the industry. I'm going to give you the list here. Again, if you've done any of these, it's okay. And by the way, the other side to know is every single one of these mistakes at one point is something that is actually done. There are exceptions to every one of these rules, so don't worry about it. So here we go. Uphill battle number 1, and this is the most common one, period pieces. Don't write period pieces right now. And that's if, when you're making your next choice, if you're going to write a screenplay next month, if you choose to write a period piece, the problem with it, and please write this in there, is it's triple the budget, triple the hassles. Triple the budget, triple the hassles. It really does come down to that. We got a whole lot of projects into major production companies. At one point, my wife and I were producing. We had 35 different projects we got into the big production companies and even studios. We came in with a high concept period piece, and 70% of the companies that we were already working with immediately said no without even considering it. As soon as they knew it was a period piece, they were done right then. It's an uphill battle. It's very difficult to get those made. Now, I know they do get made. And when they get made, it's because somebody in power wanted to do it. It's because somebody who had a 3-picture deal said, okay, for my third picture, I'll do this one. And they did the movie they've always wanted to do. That's a wonderful period piece. So I'm not saying anything bad about period pieces other than they're a difficult business decision to make until you have the power. Number 2, uphill battle, character pieces without high concepts. Character pieces without high concepts. So these are the ones where, wow, you've got some amazing characters. You're giving us, the coming of age, the slice of life of this character and what their experience was like and that kind of thing. And again, with a great character, you might be able to get that movie made at some point, but if you're starting off, that probably isn't the one you're going to use to get in the door, especially since it doesn't have a high concept. You want to come in with something that really does have a real chance. Number 3, this one, I just came out of we did a whole pitching thing with our writers, and I was watching other writers, not from our team, but other writers who were coming in and violating this one left and right, and the producers were complaining about it. Put the words multiple genres. Multiple genres. So, and then if you want to add this, just add the more, the worse. Here's why I'm saying this. There are some writers that think if they say more genres, when the producer says, what genre is it? They think if they say more genres, that gives it a better chance to sell. It's the absolute opposite. The more genres you say, the less the producer can sell it. So I've had multiple producers telling me this. I'm telling you, at least 100 producers have said, please don't say more than 2 genres. I had one guy sit and talk with our most advanced group that we have, and he says, listen, when a writer says a third genre, this is an action comedy with romance, and it's built in a future sci-fi world. He says, when they get to the third genre, I'm already done. I can't say yes to it no matter what they say after that. So please, what you need to do on this is you just simply, you say, what are the primary genres of my script? You focus entirely around that. If you can get to one genre, this is a thriller. You're in great shape. If it's 2, this is an action thriller, okay, I got it. Or this is a psychological thriller, I got it. But if you say a third one, that's poison. So please be careful with that. It often means that the writer never, ever chose a genre, which means they're not honoring the genre. So producers just say no to that. Number 4, average lead characters. And this, I hear this all the time. I'll say, so tell me about your character, and they'll tell me all kinds of things about how average and every man that character is and all of that. And it's like, okay, what's special about the character? And then they have to go to the third act when they finally tell me that this average person who's been average throughout the entire screenplay finally saves the day in the third act and they're the hero or something like that. It's like, I got that you want to have characters that are universal. That's a good thing. but you need to have characters that there's something really special about them that would cause a major actor to want to play those roles. That's the part that most people aren't thinking of. How do you get a major actor to play that role? There's got to be something special there. So, number 5, put the words, and again, this is my friend's problem, studio-only movies. That's a big uphill battle. When you get down to it, when you get to the studio level, here's the big problem. You've got all the agencies, all the management companies in Los Angeles, all competing for the same 5 studios. There's only a certain amount of movies that are going to be made at the studio level, and every production company in town is competing for those movies, right? They are pretty much making most of those movies with A-list stars, which means everybody's competing for the same top 20 stars. In that world, it's almost impossible for you to walk in without having some kind of previous success that's pretty big. It's almost impossible for you to compete at that level. So don't. So let me talk to you about the easier deals, and this is what I would recommend. I would recommend that whatever you choose right now for your next script, that it becomes one of these easier deals. Number 1, please put the words high concept or underlying property. High concept or underlying property. And when I say underlying property, I mean a property you have the rights to. Writing something that's in public domain doesn't give you anything special because anybody can write that. So the job is to either create a high concept that is something that you can pitch in one sentence, and the producer will instantly light up and go, oh my God, we've got to make this movie. Or come in with an underlying property that you have the rights to, and you have a written document that says you have the rights to that, and they have to work with you in order to make that particular movie. Number 2, easier deal. Put the words contemporary timepiece. Contemporary time period. Contemporary time period. So that means within 20 years of today's date. So if possible, within about 10 years of today's date. But once you get to 20 years, if you're 20 years in the future or 20 years in the past, both of those are period pieces. Both of those go into the high expense category. So if you can make it contemporary, you're better off. Number 3, put genre piece. It's 1 or 2 genres. And you do everything you can to honor that genre. So that's where you want to be careful. People try to be creative by violating the genre. I wouldn't do that. I would honor the genre because audiences are coming to movies expecting that genre to be honored. When you violate that genre, you often have audiences that are unhappy or unsatisfied, and they don't know why. So be careful with that. Number 4, easier deal, is lead characters that appeal to actors. So, and what we're talking about here really are characters that there's something special about them. There's something unique about them. There's something that has them stand out. Yes, they're a universal character, but because of whatever this thing is that has them stand out, the actor looks at it and says, oh my God, I've got to be that person. So let's go to strategy 6. So strategy 6 is the ultimate bait. This one, let me tell you the problem and what this solves, because that'll help make it make sense. Up until about 4 or 5 years ago, small producers would put together a movie. They'd put together their whole package. They would go to their investors. They would do everything they could to try to raise that $1 million to $5 million in order to make that movie. Their hope at that point was that the movie made back enough money to pay back those investors. And that was the big goal. About half the time they didn't make that money back, and they lost their investors. So it's really important to them that they make that money back. That was their entire focus. Then something changed, and here's what changed. A company called Blumhouse, with a producer named Jason Blum, came out with a movie called Paranormal Activity. And you may remember that movie from seeing it, but behind the scenes, I'll tell you, it created quite a stir in this industry. That movie cost $15,000 to make, and it made back $108 million. So that was an incredible success. Now, Jason Blum at that point he started telling the industry, this is what I'm going to focus on from now on. I'm going to do this over and over again. Most people in the industry didn't believe that until he came out with another movie called The Purge, which cost about $3 million to make, and it made back $84 million. He since then, has come out with a couple of other movies that have all done the same thing. So Jason Blum, his model, and this is the ultimate bait, is the new thing that producers are looking for. So here it is. Strategy 6, the ultimate bait, low budget, high concept, great roles. Low budget, high concept, great roles. Now, here's what this does. Underneath that, it says producers need these scripts because they are, put in these words, they are easy to make and they have a tremendous upside. They are easy to make and they have a tremendous upside. So if you can get great at creating low-budget, high-concept movies, that means almost any producer who makes movies in that genre is going to be interested in working with you, right? This thing, when you look at these movies, and I've done a lot of studying on this, I've done a lot of analyzing, first, the fact that they're low budget means it's easy to make. It's easier for a producer to make it. It means you can find way more producers. But the fact that they're also high concept means the moment you pitch it, people instantly get it. They're engaged, right? Movies like The Purge, it was high concept. What would happen if for a 12-hour period, people all across the United States could commit any crime without being charged, even murder, right? It's like, that's a high concept. That's something at that point. It's not anymore. It's a franchise, right? But Saw was a high concept. There were a whole bunch of these high concept movies that came out that broke out in a big way. So producers are looking for those. If you can become a master at that, at creating high concepts and then writing great low budget movies, you're not only going to get in the door, but there's going to be a very good chance that that movie gets made and that you end up becoming somebody that all of Hollywood looks at and says, oh, my God, look what these guys did. This is incredible. And people are going to want to work with you. So that's what our objective is. That's what we're trying to accomplish. Now, I told you at the beginning, this is what I'm trying to put together is a realistic path that would allow you to be able to make it within 5 years. And that's, as you saw from the success stories that we've had, the writers in our group who are succeeding, we have writers easily over 50 we have over 100 of them who have already made deals. We have some who have gotten movies made, and the reason why is because they learned the skills that were necessary. They gained an understanding of what works inside the industry. They became part of our alumni, and they continued to work with people inside the alumni to move their careers forward. If what you're trying to do is to be able to actually give this a real shot, what would happen if you jumped into this class for the first 6 months, You made sure that you had all the skills that producers need you to have to be able to work with them. You wrote a screenplay that was highly marketable from the very beginning. And by the time we were done 6 months from now, you're coming out of the program, going into the alumni, and you've got a head start on this thing of trying to create a 5-year plan that really could make something happen. That's what this whole thing is about. Again, if you're inside the Pro Series, you're going to be learning something every day. You're going to be writing every day, and you're going to be creating every day. So the program is designed to get you ready to be able to work with people inside this industry. It's designed to give you the skills that you need to be able to succeed. So if you liked what you heard here today, if you like how we think, and if what you want to do is to be part of a group that really is interacting with the industry and making things happen, where you're learning from them every single day also, if you'd like to do that, come and join us. You know, what we did here today really truly was just the tiniest tip of the iceberg. Our writers are succeeding, and one of the big reasons, is because we are constantly guiding them to be able to make things happen in this industry. One last thing I'll say, I want you to know this. I talk to producers every week, and about every 3-4 months I go through and do a whole series of interviews. In fact, at the end of this month, I'm going to be meeting with 20 producers and doing another set of interviews to update us on exactly what's going on at the present moment. That's what we're doing behind the scenes constantly. We have our writers making deals. We have our writers working with producers. I'm in the midst of working with them as they're going through their processes. So we are probably one of the most up-to-date organizations out there. If this is the kind of thing that you want to be part of, jump in. You know, keep asking yourself this: what would happen if you gave this to yourself? What if you took this step, and as a result of that, you were able to achieve more than you ever thought possible for yourself as a screenwriter? I promise you, this program, you will love what you learn from it. You will love what it does for your writing. And like all of our others, we have a guarantee. If in the on this program, you get 8 days. If in the first 8 days of the program you don't like it for any reason, you just simply email us and we will refund your money. We take really good care of our writers. If somebody has a problem and for some reason something doesn't work for them, if it's in the first part of the program, we will respond and give you your money back. So if you're thinking about this, jump in. Right now you get $300 off. Right now you can get in for a really inexpensive payment plan. Jump in and take the steps that will move your writing forward. So with that, listen, I want to say thank you guys for being here with me today and for being willing to go through my voice issues. I really appreciate that, and I hope you guys got something out of this. This is Hal Crozman with Screenwriting U, wishing you guys all the best. I hope to see you and hope to work with you at some point. Bye-bye, everyone.